When you think about our financial system, you probably picture banks, right? Maybe trading floors, stacks of cash. But behind all of that, something fundamental has changed. There's this huge invisible digital world that's now propping everything up. And that begs a pretty big question. Who's actually running the show?
So let's just cut right to the chase. Who really controls your money? You might think, well, I do, or my bank does. But honestly, that's not the full picture anymore, not even close. The answer has gotten way more complex, and it affects everything: your savings, your mortgage, even the stability of the entire economy.
Because the real control, it isn't in a vault. It's up there, in the cloud. Yeah, you heard that right. The entire European financial sector has basically moved house. It's now living on digital services run by just a handful of giant tech companies. And here's the kicker: none of them are based in Europe. And that dependency, well, it creates some pretty serious risks.
So how on earth did we get here? To really get it, we need to pull back the curtain and look at this massive digital shift that's been going on. And we're not just talking about storing our photos online. We are talking about the very engines that run our financial world.
The main players have a name: hyperscalers. Think of them as the titans of the tech world. It's a small club of massive, global companies that absolutely dominate the cloud services market. They provide the digital plumbing for thousands and thousands of businesses, including, you guessed it, the vast majority of Europe's banks and insurance companies.
And this slide really shows you what a game changer this has been. The old way, banks had their own server rooms, their own data centers, super expensive, a nightmare to maintain, but they had total control. The new way, they just rent everything from the hyperscalers. It's flexible, it's innovative, but here's the crucial trade-off. They've handed over the keys. They've outsourced control of their own foundation.
And it's not just a little bit of control, they're handing over more and more. You see, it works in layers like a stack. At the bottom, a bank just rents the basic hardware. But as you climb that stack to platform and then software as a service, the hyperscaler is managing pretty much the whole shebang, and the trend is for banks to keep climbing, which just means their dependency gets deeper and deeper.
So that leads us to the billion-dollar question, right? What happens if this new foundation, this foundation we don't even control, starts to wobble? And believe me, these risks are no longer just theoretical.
And here are a couple of extreme but totally plausible scenarios that really spell out the danger. First, imagine a geopolitical standoff where a foreign government just orders its tech companies to cut off services to Europe. Poof. Or, how about a hybrid attack where a hostile state takes down a critical provider? Since so many banks and insurers rely on the same few companies, the impact would be systemic. It could shake the entire economy.
This whole risk is made so much worse by something called vendor lock-in. It's a simple idea, really. Once a bank builds its systems on one company's specific technology, getting out becomes almost impossible. The cost and the sheer complexity of moving are so high that for all practical purposes, they're trapped.
I love this analogy on the slide. It's perfect. It's like building your entire house with these special, custom-made bricks that only one company in the whole world sells. You are completely at their mercy. They set the price, they set the terms, and what can you do? You have no other choice.
This whole situation puts Europe at a major crossroads, with two very different futures. On one side, you have the digital colony, where Europe is vulnerable, subject to the whims of other global powers. On the other side, you have digital autonomy, where Europe can actually protect its own financial system, its own data, and its own values. The stakes are just incredibly high.
So, what can we do about it? Well, the good news is that regulators and banks are waking up to these risks. They're working on some immediate fixes to build up what's called digital resilience right now.
And the centerpiece of this effort is a new European rulebook called DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. This is a huge deal. It's a landmark law designed to force the entire financial sector to get much better at managing these digital risks and preparing for major disruptions.
And DORA comes with a whole toolkit. We're talking about financial institutions working together on threat planning, running these massive chain tests with their IT suppliers to find the weak spots before the attackers do. It also pushes for smart tech fixes, like using open standards and containerization, which is just a fancy way to package software so it can be moved between cloud providers easily. And critically, it's about taking back control of the really important stuff, like your own encryption keys. But look, these short-term fixes are only one part of the solution. The bigger, long-term vision, well, that's for Europe to achieve genuine digital autonomy. Which brings us to the final, critical question. How does Europe actually do it?
How does it move from being a digital colony to being a digital power? How does it build a future where it's in control of its own destiny?
The reality is it's going to require a huge, coordinated effort. It means tackling the things that have held back innovation in Europe for years. It means fostering and scaling up homegrown tech companies so they can compete on the world stage. And ultimately, it means developing real viable European alternatives to the current hyperscalers. It's a long and difficult road, but it's one many see as absolutely essential for Europe's future.
So, this all leaves us with one final thought. The very foundation of our financial future, how we save, how we invest, how we get a loan, it's all being built as we speak. So the critical decision we face is this: who do we want holding the blueprints?